non-vegan foods that have health benefits, for example, dairy, unprocessed meat, and fish.
So does this mean these animal products are healthy for us?
Our next session is titled, with a provoking title, Have We Failed the Vegan Diet? The Truth We Don't Want to Hear. And I would briefly like to introduce our speakers today, Luisa Hilbrand and Phil Roggenbuck. Thank you for being here. Luisa is a public health expert from Germany who recently completed her master's in epidemiology. She has been an active animal rights advocate for several years, organizing with PETA street teams and speaking up for animals. Phil, on the other hand, is an IT security expert from Germany who has been active in the animal rights movement since 2022. He's involved with the groups Drums for Animals, PETA, and is part of the organizational team of this wonderful conference this year. And today in their talk, Luisa and Phil will explore the differences between veganism and a healthy diet, share insights from science, and challenge common myths about nutrition. So please welcome with me Luisa and Phil.
Yeah, thanks, Leonie, for the nice introduction, and thank you all for coming.
Yeah, and also thanks to all the helpers and everyone that makes this conference possible. Thanks a lot. Yeah, our presentation is titled, Have We Failed the Vegan Diet?
And the truth we might not want to hear. So we have 4 parts in this presentation. Firstly, we will start with some ex-vegans and their health claims, followed by the relationship between healthy diets and veganism. And after that, we will look at some issues with the vegan diet, and we will end with myths around the vegan diet.
So let's start with the chapter ex-vegans. Obviously, ex-vegans are people that were vegan before, but are not anymore. And they post about it in a form of blog or make videos. And my research for this part of the presentation was to watch these videos, to read these blog posts, and find out the statements what these people make for not being vegan anymore, and try to research a bit what we can learn from that, maybe. Yeah, it's important to say here, our whole presentation is kind of based on more or less scientific evidence, and since these are statements made from people, they're subjective, and there's no scientific evidence behind that, so they could be telling the truth, they could be lying. We have to take all of what they say kind of with a grain of salt. So, first of all, like I said, I read a lot of blog posts, I watched a lot of videos, and then I tried to group all these people into some groups. These are these 3 groups. The first one I call the enlightened, the second one are the nutrient deficient, and the third group is the legits. So these 3 types will be explained now in further detail. The enlightened is a group where spirituality is a big thing. So they feel a connection with Earth, they're dreaming of eating steak and other animal parts, and they say things like, I lead with my heart and not always data, and they more often have their own truth, which is kind of problematic, because I think if we have a scientific proven truth, to deny this truth and to say, I view this differently, I have my own truth, is for me very problematic, because it's close to fake news, because you're denying the scientific evidence and just say you have your own truth, which is something else. Yeah, this group seems like a very big group, because often these people have a wide audience and are more often influencers than not. But I think this group is actually rather small. It just appears as big because they have a big influence. Also, these people, interestingly, in this group, are vegan for longer than in the next group, for example. So people in this group are vegan from like 5 to 9 years, for example, and then start going back to being vegetarian or even less. The next group, however, the nutrient deficient group, consists of people that are vegan for a very short amount of time, for like 1 to a maximum of 3 years is what I found. And the problem with this group is they don't supplement or they start too late. And in addition to that, they often eat extreme diets like raw or low fat, where it is even more important to supplement a good amount or the right amount with on everything. And they have most of the time 3 symptoms, which is kind of a foggy brain. They have very low energy levels, is what they say. And more than often, they have some kind of skin issues. And these 3 things can relate to the most basic supplements missing, like B12, D3, or iron. And that's why this group is called the nutrient deficient group, because they probably have these feelings or probably have the symptoms because they're not supplementing good or they don't eat a good variety of foods, so they're not getting all the nutrients that they need. And yeah, lastly, they often call out veganism in kind of a way, so they want to call out to other people why veganism is bad for you, and often they say you can't be vegan in a healthy way because they couldn't. And lastly, we have a very different group. It's called the Legits. This is a group that seems to consist of people that are really trying to be vegan, but it's just not working out for them. So what that means is they're vegan and they get symptoms. And these symptoms are often more symptoms than in a nutrient deficient group, and often more severe symptoms than in the nutrient deficient group. Which means they have, like, I don't want to say actual problems, but it's way bigger than just the foggy brains and the low energy levels. And these people often try to solve these problems while staying vegan, as well as they're supplementing, or they seem to be supplementing enough, and as well eating a good variety of foods and getting enough nutrients from everywhere. But we will hear more on that, why this could be the case, from Luisa later. And last point is very important. Often these people seem to not get understood by other vegans. So often I read that they were asking for help. It's not working out for me, what can I do? And often they get called out for something like, you're doing it wrong, you have to do it like that or like that. And they're trying, like they're really trying, or it seems like they're really trying. And it's just not working out. One very interesting claim that I found over many different people in, not exactly in this phrasing, but different, is that ask yourself if it's remotely normal for eating to be so complicated. And I want to take that claim and talk a bit about it, because eating healthy is not that easy. I don't want to say it's complicated, I don't want to say it's hard, but you have to buy fresh ingredients, you have to cook them, and you have to plan ahead. You have to plan different foods, different nutrients, so that you get all you need. And also you have to supplement. And that's not really easy to do all of that and to get like 100% the best healthy diet you can get. So what is the conclusion of that? It seems to be that many ex-vegans are not of the legit type, but it also seems to be that some are. The important part here is seems, because like I said in the beginning, it's all statements from the people themselves. So it's all subjective, and they're all different people, and that's just what they say, how they feel. What can we do with that is go with science, which we will talk about later on. And the most important part about that is stay nice and use arguments, not hate. Because that's also a big point that I found in nearly every one of the blog posts or the videos that I watched or read, is that people got insulted. People got negative comments from vegans, they got insulted, and even some say that they got death threats. And I think that's just, that's very bad for our movement. So we're trying not to be assholes here. So if people stop being vegan for some reason, and it doesn't matter which type they are, we should be kind and at least listen to them. It's important if they talk about fake news or spread fake news. It's important to talk about that and to address that, because they're just saying things that aren't right. If we just insult them, then that's not helping our movement, because they're already on the brink of leaving veganism or already left it. and then we go ahead and insult them. And so they probably will never come back, which is kind of understandable. And I'm really sure that none of us here or online will do that, but there are people that do that, and it's just really hurting the whole movement. So, hearing all these stories from ex-vegans now, the question rises, have we failed the vegan diet, Luisa?
And have we even failed the animals that we are trying to save? So moving on to the second chapter now, we will look at the relationship between healthy diets and veganism and whether or not veganism equals health. First of all, there are some obvious benefits that are associated with vegan health. For example, weight loss, lower rates of type 2 diabetes, better cardiovascular health, lower rates of certain cancers, and also, in general, better blood lipid profile. However, just because we have better health outcomes among vegans or among people who eat a vegan diet, that does not mean that there's a causal relationship between these two things. In fact, we probably deal with something called selection bias. So selection bias means that there's a certain group of people that is unconsciously selected for a study that does not represent the general population. In our case, we have vegans who are, compared to the general population, usually higher educated on health and nutrition. They are usually more physically active and drink less and smoke less. They also have a higher socioeconomic status, and they are more likely to be female. All of these things, independently from veganism, are related to better health outcomes. So we have a healthier vegan sample if we compare vegans with the general population. And that means that we cannot say that veganism equals health.
But isn't veganism way more than just health?
Yes, exactly. That's why I put up the definition of veganism here to go back to the very basics. And I'm sure you all know this definition by heart, but I would like to point out two things here. First of all, veganism goes way beyond diet because it's a philosophy and a way of living. And additionally, it not only includes food, but also clothing and any other purposes like entertainment and animal testing, etc. And of course, quantitatively, food causes the most suffering among animals, but in the context of veganism as a whole, food is only one aspect of veganism. Therefore, a vegan diet is not equal to veganism as it does not include main characteristics of a vegan lifestyle. Now we go to a healthy diet and look what a healthy diet looks like. So a healthy diet is low in salt and sodium. It's high in fruits and vegetables, low in saturated fatty acids, and also low in trans fats, but high in unsaturated fatty acids. And also the content of free and added sugars is reduced, both in food and beverages. And there's a limit to excess calorie intake, portion size, and also the foods that you eat when you want to eat a healthy diet are low in energy density. So all of these things are not exclusive to veganism. In fact, there are vegan foods which do not meet the criteria for a healthy diet. For example, we have palm oil, coconut, and fried foods, which are all perfectly vegan, but high in saturated fats. We have vegan processed foods, which are high in salt and energy density, and also we have vegan sweets, which are usually high in sugar. On the other hand, there are non-vegan foods that have health benefits, for example, dairy, unprocessed meat, and fish.
So does this mean these animal products are healthy for us?
That just means that there are studies pointing into the direction that there are some health benefits in non-vegan foods, which we should not deny. However, that being said, the healthiest diet is a diet centered around whole plant foods, no matter if there are animal products included or not. Whole plant foods should always be the majority of the diet, and by majority, like global experts actually have reached a pretty solid consensus that it's around 80% of the diet should be made up of whole plant foods. Still, and with the 80%, the last 20% you are actually not doing for your individual health, because the difference between 80% vegan or whole plant foods and 100% vegan does not make a difference for your own health, but you're doing it for several other reasons, for example, the animals and the environment. And still, we cannot deny scientific facts in nutrition, whether about vegan or non-vegan food, even though we might not like some of them. Because that will make ourselves be perceived less accountable and weaken our vegan movement, which we do not want. And also, there are enough reasons to go vegan apart from individual health.
So Luisa, tell me, does that mean the ex-vegans are right? Does that mean there are issues with the vegan diet?
Yeah, thanks for the question. The short answer is that it's complicated, and the long answer, it actually is complicated. So today, more people than ever before are vegan, and comparable to medications with really rare side effects, the more people that take a certain medication, no matter how rare that side effect is, we will witness more side effects and we will meet more people that experience side effects. So most people, of course, are absolutely fine on a vegan diet and even thrive on a vegan diet. However, there are different reasons, we heard some of them in the first chapter, that experience issues with the vegan diet. And some of them are easily preventable, for example, supplementing enough, but some of them might not be preventable, and some of them we don't even know why they appear. For example, it could be that some people, for example, because of genetic variations, have a low conversion rate of certain nutrients that other people don't even think about it once in their life because they never experience problems. Or we have a malabsorption for certain nutrients that also most people will never experience. And the good thing is that by acknowledging that there are certain issues, we do not have to claim that a vegan diet is not safe. Of course, we should always hold people accountable, especially if they spread wrong information, but we should always go with science.
Yeah, and that's what I said before, but what does going with science mean?
So science is all about trial and error. So you try something, you see if it works or not. And it is also about data. The more data you gather, the more accurate assumptions you can make about what actually is the truth. And again, we have more people than ever being vegan, which is a great achievement for our movement. But that also means that we have potentially more people that, for whatever reasons, experience problems. And this is also a chance for veganism, because by knowing more, having more data, we can make veganism, or at least a vegan diet, more accessible and practicable, because we can get companies to supplement their products, especially vegan alternatives. We can create better supplements, and we just have overall more knowledge on nutritional needs for vegans. And that is also important because we as vegans, we are not the same. We are really diverse. We have vegan parents, we have vegan pregnant people, we have breastfeeding moms, we have toddlers, we have older people, we have athletes, and all of them have different nutritional needs also within the vegan diet.
So now we're going to talk, this is the last part of the presentation, we're going to talk about some myths around the vegan diet.
From both non-vegans and vegans.
So the first myth is calcium in cow's milk causes mineral loss in bones and therefore higher fracture risk. This is actually not true. A recent meta-analysis in 2022 found out that there's no association found between milk consumption and fracture risk. We had some debates about that before because the science was going in both, or there were studies were pointing in both directions, which meant higher cow's milk consumption lowers the fracture risk, or lowering milk consumption lowers the fracture risk. But a lot of the studies had methodological issues or didn't analyze confounder before publishing a result. So yeah, that is not true.
Secondly, we have the myth that eggs raise blood cholesterol. This myth comes from dietary cholesterol that is present, for example, in eggs. It's relatively high in eggs. And of course, plants have zero cholesterol in them. However, we know now that the main factor for elevated LDL cholesterol, which is the so-called bad cholesterol, is actually dietary saturated fat and not dietary cholesterol. And as I said before, dietary saturated fat is also in plants and in vegan foods. And you can see that on the nutritional label. For example, you can, it always says fats, and then it says saturated fat, and then you can see like how much saturated fat is in there. So this myth is also not true.
So the next myth is iron from animals. So animal-based iron is absorbed better than plant-based iron. That is also not true. A decade ago, we didn't know that there was a third iron called ferritin. We knew there was heme iron, which has a good absorption and is exclusively found in animal products. We also knew there was non-heme iron, which is found in plants. Its absorption was not as good, and it was also easily interfered, for example, by caffeine. We now know, though, there's also ferritin, which is found in some plants, especially red lentils, which is as good absorbed as heme iron, and also isn't interfered by other substances. So this myth is also not true.
Then, probably our favorite myth, the vegan diet is low in protein. We know now that this is absolutely not true. Plants have enough protein. However, vegans should still make an effort to include protein-rich foods and also to combine different protein sources over the day, because that increases bioavailability of that protein. The reason why I stress that is that when I first became vegan, everyone on the internet basically told me that as long as you get enough calories, your protein needs are met. And yes, it is true that you will most likely not die from a protein deficiency if you eat enough. However, the protein you get from rice and vegetables is not ideal, and you should include things like beans, tofu, and other things that are high in protein. And now, the vegan movement on average is still quite young, but as we get older, protein needs increase. So at the latest, at the age of 65 and after that, you should really make an effort to include protein in your diet, because after that age, it gets even more important than it is before.
So that's actually kind of true.
Yeah.
Next one is about detoxing. A vegan diet detoxifies the body and helps with weight loss. That is kind of true. The detoxing part not, but the weight loss a bit. We have the liver, which is a very special organ. It's very efficient and it's very good at detoxing our whole system, our whole body. And it does its job normally, if it's healthy, very good. And so we don't need any special drinks or supplements or foods to help detox the body. Weight loss is, however, achieved through a calorie deficit, which is easier found in a whole foods plant-based diet than it is in a modern Western diet that the general public normally does. So this myth is also kind of true. The first part not, but the second a bit. Also a good one, soy contains hormones and can lead to breast cancer and can also make man to woman, as I have heard. That is absolutely not true. Actually, quite the opposite. Soy reduces the risk for breast cancer because it has a lot of phytoestrogens. And these phytoestrogens come with a lot of health benefits and especially help women in their menopausal. Myth 7 is about eating raw. It is better to eat raw fruits and vegetables instead of cooked fruits. That is also not true. There is something behind it. It is true that there are some nutrients, for example, folate or vitamin C, that get destroyed while cooking. That doesn't mean that as soon as you turn on the pan that everything's just gone, but over time, the longer it heats, the more of it goes away. But on the other hand, there are nutrients like beta-carotene and lycopene that are actually better absorbed after they have been cooked than before. Also very important is, on a raw diet, you have a lower intake of calories, protein, minerals, and also some vitamins, because you lose out of great things like beans, lentils, and whole grains, for example. Now to our last myth.
Yeah, so the last myth is about red meat and cigarettes, and it is red meat is as bad as smoking cigarettes. So this myth comes from a classification made by the World Health Organization about carcinogenic substances. So red meat is classified as a 2A carcinogen, making it probably carcinogenic. Processed meat, however, is actually a class 1 carcinogen, making it actually carcinogenic to humans. And they are, processed meat is in the same group as cigarettes, which is also a class 1 carcinogen, therefore actually carcinogenic to humans.
So that means probably not red meat, but processed meat is actually as bad as smoking cigarettes, right?
No, that's not true, because this classification does not quantify the risk. Meaning, just because two things are in the same classification group, the increase in risk is different, can be different. For example, for each 50 grams of processed meat that you eat a day, your risk for colorectal cancer increases by 18%. Smoking tobacco increases the risk for lung cancer by up to 2,100%, which is obviously way higher than the processed meat increase. So this myth is also not true.
So what is our conclusion? First, what's happening to animals is absolutely wrong, and it should be stopped as soon as possible. There are more than 100 reasons to go vegan, but health does not have to be one of them.
We should also hold people accountable, especially, as I said before, if they obviously spread wrong news. But at the same time, we need to be kind and we need to listen to them, because everything else will throw a bad light onto our movement, which is an amazing movement, and we don't want that, and we want to stand up for animals. And therefore, we want to be perceived as accountable and taken seriously. And lastly, as we mentioned several times during this presentation, we should always go with science and not deny scientific facts, even though we might not like some of them.
Because, like you said before, this also weakens our movement. We can't just accept it and still say it's the right thing to go vegan, even though there might be health benefits in animal products. And yeah, I think that's a crucial point here. So yeah, actually we were very fast, way faster than we were ever before, and than we planned. Yeah, these are our sources, and yeah, if you have any questions, then
we have
go
enough
ahead.
time now to answer questions. Thanks for listening.
Perfect to Phil and Luisa, very well done. We have 10 minutes for questions. Are there any urgent ones?
Can I ask you, as a conclusion, would you say there are people who are genetically set up in a certain way that they just cannot be vegan, never mind how much they supplement, or is that not the case?
We don't know yet. Like, we don't have any knowledge about certain genetic, like we have knowledge that, for example, B12 is absorbed differently by different people. We know that, for example, omega-3 fatty acids, like the long-chain omega-3s, can be absorbed differently, but there's no evidence that there is like genetic reasons for not being able to convert certain nutrients or that you have other needs. But that's what we were saying, like, we have to listen to those people who experience problems and might not even know themselves what the issue is, just so that we can learn more. And nowadays, like, almost every nutrient you can actually make, like, artificially. So by knowing that and knowing that there are certain nutrients, we can create supplements that people can try then, and maybe that makes them feel better and enables them to stay vegan. But like, short answer, we don't know yet. There's just not enough studies done on this.
And so if those people say that they have problems, are you always sure it's because of the diet? Because doesn't everybody have problems once in a while?
No, yeah, of course, you don't know. Like, that's what Phil said in the beginning. Like, we never know what people tell us and what is true and what not. But what those people say about their diet, for example, they eat a raw diet, a very strict diet, only juice for 4 weeks, or I don't know, we heard all of that stuff, then it's kind of like clear that it's like there was an issue in the diet. But of course, there are always 100 reasons. Like, some people are just get sick just because they get sick, and that's not because of diet. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. It's very hard because, like I said in the beginning, it's just statements these people make, and it's to us whether how much we believe that or not, I think. And it's interesting to read all of that from the ex-vegans, because some say like things that are really hard to believe, because someone said he had like so many issues when being vegan, and then he ate meat, a small portion of meat, and as soon as he got it in his mouth, he was feeling better. And obviously that is not how it works, because obviously. So it's really hard, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Are there any other questions in the audience?
Also, as a placeholder, we are here until Sunday, so if any questions arise by then just go ahead and ask us directly if you want.
I will maybe go to another person first.
I don't know exactly how I want to phrase the question yet, but it is based on your last slide about the conclusions, as in like always go with science. Now, my usual to-go like nutritionist is Dr. Michael Greger, which I assume you know. But then quite often when I talk with other people who want to be introduced into a vegan diet, they obviously don't know many nutritionists to go to. And then they might find other studies, and often, of course, they are sponsored by certain industries, like the dairy industry. So I guess my question is kind of like, what advice would you give as in like go with science? Because obviously also science can be biased, and there's like good and bad studies.
So the advice would be that you have to actually read the studies, because as you said, yeah, there are good studies and there are bad studies, and what I get a bit frustrated about mostly is that I feel like a lot of people only read abstracts or conclusions of studies, and what it is important that you read the methodological part, because there you can see if they have been adjusted for confounders, how big the sample was, how the study went along in general, and then you can see like if there are methodological issues, and even if there this is also important, even if there are methodological issues and it's not done perfectly, which by the way is really hard in nutritional science to do, that does not mean it's a bad study. It just means you have to take what the study showed with like all of the things that you should have adjusted for and the issues that these studies show. You have to keep that in the back of your head. So yeah, basically I would say read the studies and also try to stay updated, because there's always more studies coming in, and educate yourself on the hierarchy of evidence. So we have this pyramid with randomized controlled trials at the top. So these are the most valuable studies, which are hard for nutritional science. But yeah, just educate yourself on how studies are conducted, I would say.
Yeah. And reading all the studies and identifying methodological issues is a very hard thing to do for like a normal person like me, because she can do that, but I cannot. So I guess my tip here would be, first of all, kind of be open-minded and don't try to come out of the bubble and read articles from kind of all over the place, which does not mean you have to believe all of them, but at least trying to get a bigger picture of everything.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I just got inspired for a question. How did you check how AI can help making sense of studies, like really finding meaningful ones, and then also getting a quick check, are they really solid or can I trust them? So because it's really hard to go through this manually and read all the things.
Yes, absolutely. We haven't directly done that, but I've had some experience with, I don't know what the model is from. There's like one model, I think it's called Mini-Check or something, and it's made for verifying kind of claims. So like if someone says animal farming doesn't harm the planet, then you could just ask this question to this specific model and it will just answer that's not true. And the thing about this mini model is it can't really help you in the process of understanding that. Because it's really small and it could just kind of answer yes and no. So if you ask direct questions, you will get answers. But if you then say, why is that the case, or what is the problem there, then you have to go somewhere else.
And also it can help a lot with understanding studies, because in the publications, like, they use a lot of like hard vocabulary, which might be hard to understand if you're not like into it. And then you can always like ask the AI to translate that, if you want to call it that, and ask for like how did they adjust for confounders, and how would you value this evidence in the hierarchy of evidence.
Yeah, that brought another point up for me. Yeah, it's a good question from you, and the thing is, the most important thing is, the more you give AI, I guess the probability is higher that something comes out that is kind of false. So it's a good example from Luisa. You could take like portions that you don't understand or that you want to verify, instead of just like feeding it the whole paper and then just asking, is that right or not?
Great. I think we're running a bit out of time, but Luisa and Phil are going to be around at the conference, so feel free to approach them. For now, very big thank you for your presentation. Very well done.
And you can also send us an email if you want.